Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift. Part 1. A Voyage to Lilliput. Lemuel Gulliver was born in Nottinghamshire, England. He was the third among 5 sons. He went to college in Cambridge, but his family was too poor to keep him there. But he worked as an apprentice to an eminent surgeon named James Bates in London. He studied navigation and mathematics. He believed he was destined to be a voyager. After his apprenticeship, Gulliver studied physics. Mr. Bates recommended him as a surgeon aboard a ship named Swallow, which was under a command of Captain Abraham Pennell.
Command. Patunogin mo yung mga letters, ano?
Command of Captain Abraham Pennell. After 3.5 years, he worked as a doctor in London. He married Mary Burton. When Mr. Bates died, Gulliver's business started to fail. He went back out to the sea. He made several voyages of 6 years aboard 2 ships as a doctor, but he was last few voyages proved and unapproved.
Ano sa mga salita mo?
And he grew weary. He planned to stay home with his wife and family, but he was offered as a very profitable work aboard a ship called Antelope under the command of Captain William Pritchard. In one of the voyages in Antelope, 6 other crew members boarded a boat which capsized, losing all the companions. He swam safely to the shore, dead tired. He lay down on the grass, where he slept very soundly. When he woke up with his arms and legs of the thread, he was tied. He was shocked to see a human who was less than 6 inches tall and climbed on top of him. The creature, holding a bow and arrow, stood to his chest, and lists 44 humans of the same size also climbed on top of him. When they frightened and scampered away, when he shouted and roared loudly, some of the creatures leapt to the ground and were obviously hurt, but they immediately went back to him. One of them, acting very bravely, got real close to his face and cried out, "Hekina de Gul." The others repeated the words. Gulliver did not know what the words meant, but he struggled to free himself. The strings that bound him to the ground finally succeeded in wrenching out the pegs and strings. He managed to loosen the strings and tied his hair by violently pulling it. That effort gave him excessive pain. The little creatures were able to run away before Gulliver could seize them. One of the creatures cried out, "Tall, go following it." Instantly, 100 little arrows flew in the air and pricked Gulliver's body and face like needles. He groaned in pain. Other set of arrows soared towards him as he stopped struggling. He decided to be quiet and still when the little creatures he was already quiet and stopped his attempts to escape, and they stopped attacking him. The small humans started building a stage near Gulliver, so no one. The one called Hergo went up the stage.
Okay.
Up the stage and made the speech. She shouted, "Long grow the whole sun," whereupon around 50 of the creatures cut the string and Van fastened the left side of Gulliver's head. Knowing allowed Gulliver to turn his head and look at the speaker. He could not understand what the speaker was telling him, but he could sense there was a part in the speech where the speaker was threatening him. with harm, and there were parts of the speaker that was talking kindly to him and promising him with some good things. Gulliver answered a few words in the submissive manner. Gulliver made made known to the creatures that he was already very hungry, and by repeatedly putting his finger on the mouth, the Hergo understood and offered Gulliver to be fed. About 100 of the inhabitants climbed on top of him and walked towards his head carrying baskets of meat. Knew he was getting animal flesh, but he could not distinguish each one by taste. The creatures were amazed by Gulliver's size and appetite. Gulliver made signs to show he was thirsty, and the creatures gave him 2 large casks of wine. After Gulliver had consumed the wine, was small, danced happily on his breast, shouting, "Henkai the Ghoul" several times. Gulliver thought of seizing the 40 or 50 creatures, throwing them forcefully against the ground. But he had to forego it when he remembered his promise to Goodwill, and the creatures had been quite hospitable to him. A high-ranking official when climbed on top of his leg and spoke to him. Gulliver understood he would be carried to the hospital city. He wanted to talk, but the official, understanding what meant, insisted he should be brought to the city as prisoner, that the creatures would doubt Gulliver's face and hands, and with the ointment was stinging, sleepy. He slept for 8 hours, and he learned later that the wine he drank has been laced with a sleeping potion. While Gulliver slept 500
Hanggang saan ka?
slept
Hanggang dito ka na lang.
500 and carpenters and engineers prepared the greatest engine that creatures had, that machine that would bring Gulliver to the city. It was the ground, not about 7 feet long and 4 feet wide, moving upon 20 the 2 hills per night. 100 strong men worked together to 3 hours to put Gulliver on top of the vehicle. 15 hundreds of horses,
Ubusin mo yun,
each measuring about 4.5 inches tall. He pulled the vehicle to the city, which has half of a mile away, then marched the whole day and rested at night, watching him. 500 of these guard carried torches, while the other 500 were armed with bows and arrows. Everyone prepared to shoot Gulliver. The moment he created trouble, they continued. The moment he created trouble. Their journey the next day, at sunrise, they reached the gates of the city at noon. The emperor met Gulliver at the gate, but the emperor's officers would not allow his majesty to climb on top of Gulliver's body because he deemed it dangerous. That the carriage stopped near an abandoned ascent, a large temple where Gulliver would not be kept as a prisoner. The gate of temple, which faced north, was about 4 feet high and 2 feet wide. It was to the gate, and Gulliver left the leg that was chained. Not far from the temple was a tower which was 5 feet high.
Okay. Good job.